Pay attention to the seemingly unassuming woman, her silhouette framed by the midday sun filtering through the bustling bar's large windows. Her name was Eleanor Vance, a woman in her late 50s, her appearance belying a steely resolve forged in the crucible of perceived injustice. This was the moment she had meticulously planned, the culmination of weeks, if not months, of simmering resentment and a singular, chilling objective. Judge Alistair Finch, a man whose stern gavel had brought down a sentence on her beloved nephew, sat alone at a secluded table in the dimly lit corner of the Gavel and Grog, a local establishment ironically favored by legal professionals. The hum of afternoon conversations and the clinking of glasses provided a deceptive backdrop of normalcy. Eleanor approached with a practiced casualness, a slight, almost imperceptible tremor in her hands, the only outward sign of the monumental act she was about to commit. She carried a small, unassuming purse clutched tightly, its contents a deadly secret. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, were fixed on the judge Amu, who, engrossed in a legal document, occasionally took a slow sip from the amber liquid in his glass. He was a creature of habit, a fact Eleanor had painstakingly exploited in her surveillance. Every Tuesday, between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m., Judge Finch would retreat to this very table, seeking a quiet respite from the demands of the courthouse. Eleanor had observed this ritual repeatedly, noting the exact timing, the chosen beverage, and crucially, the moments when his attention would be most diverted. Today, fate, or perhaps Eleanor's meticulous planning, had offered an even greater opportunity. The judge, seemingly tired or perhaps under the influence of a light lunch, had begun to nod off, his head resting against the plush back of the booth, the legal document sliding precariously from his grasp. This was her window, a fleeting opportunity that she seized with a predatory grace. With a final glance around, confirming no direct eyes were on her, Eleanor reached into her purse. Her fingers, nimble despite her age, extracted a small, unmarked vial. The liquid inside was clear, odorless, and utterly lethal. She leaned over the table, her body shielding her actions from the few scattered patrons, her hand moving with swift, practiced precision. The contents of the vial were emptied into Judge Finch's half-finished drink, dissolving instantly, leaving no trace. The deed was done. A cold satisfaction mixed with a nascent dread washed over her. She retreated as silently as she had arrived, merging back into the bar's ambient noise, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She believed she had executed the perfect crime, a silent act of retribution against the man who had torn her family apart. What Eleanor did not know, could not have known, was that the seemingly innocuous establishment had recently upgraded its security system, an array of high-definition cameras strategically placed, silently capturing every angle, every fleeting gesture. One such camera, discreetly mounted above the very booth where Judge Finch sat, had recorded her entire calculated approach, the furtive movement of her hand, and the chilling act of poisoning. The timestamp on the footage would later stand as irrefutable evidence. The question was no longer if Judge Finch had been targeted, but who would uncover the truth and how swiftly justice in turn would find Eleanor Vance. The unsuspecting judge continued to slumber, his life teetering on the precipice of a deadly concoction, while the digital eyes of the bar bore silent witness to the chilling tableau. This act of cold, premeditated vengeance, fueled by a deep-seated grievance, would unravel in ways Eleanor could never have foreseen, caught in the unblinking gaze of modern surveillance. And the first tremors of alarm began subtly, hours after Eleanor had slipped away, convinced of her success. Judge Finch's absence from his usual afternoon appointments raised initial eyebrows, but given his demanding schedule, it was initially dismissed as an unexpected delay. It wasn't until his clerk, concerned by unanswered calls, dispatched a bailiff to his residence that the true gravity of the situation began to unfold. The bailiff, upon finding the judge unresponsive and gravely ill, immediately called for emergency services. The scene at his home was chaotic, a flurry of paramedics and concerned colleagues, all unaware of the insidious attack that had transpired earlier. At the hospital, doctors initially suspected a sudden severe medical event, perhaps a stroke or a heart attack. However, as the judge's condition rapidly deteriorated, exhibiting symptoms inconsistent with common ailments, a more sinister possibility began to emerge. The medical team, puzzled by the rapid onset and unusual constellation of symptoms, initiated a battery of tests, including a toxicology screen. This was the first methodical step into the unknown. Meanwhile, back at the Gavel and Grog, life continued with its usual ebb and flow. The afternoon patrons gave way to the evening crowd, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded hours earlier within its walls. The bar staff, busy with their routines, had no reason to suspect anything amiss. It was the following morning, with news of Judge Finch's critical condition spreading through the local legal community, that the pieces slowly began to connect. A junior prosecutor, a mentee of the judge, remembered seeing him at the bar the previous afternoon. This seemingly minor detail triggered a chain of events. Detective Harding, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for meticulousness, was assigned to the case. His initial approach was systematic. Interview everyone, gather every piece of circumstantial evidence. The gavel and grog was an obvious first stop. Harding, accompanied by his partner Detective Miller, arrived at the bar presenting their credentials. The ward manager, a jovial man named Frank, was initially dismissive, assuring them that nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. However, when pressed about Judge Finch's routine, Frank confirmed the judge's regular Tuesday visits. It was then that Detective Harding's sharp eye caught sight of a small, almost imperceptible camera lens tucked away in the corner of the ceiling directly above the judge's usual table. "You have security footage, I presume?" Harding asked, his tone neutral but firm. Frank, slightly flustered, confirmed that they had recently upgraded their system, pointing to a small, unassuming office at the back. This was the first critical breakthrough. The detectives had spent hours reviewing the footage from the previous day. The sheer volume of data was daunting, but Harding's methodical approach paid off. They fast-forwarded through the mundane hours, focusing on the specific window of time when Judge Finch was known to be present, and then there it was. At precisely 1:37 p.m., a woman, her face clearly visible in the high-definition recording, approached Judge Finch's table. Her movements, initially casual, became subtly furtive. The lean, the quick dip of her hand into her purse, the almost imperceptible flick of her wrist over the judge's drink. It was all there, stark and undeniable. The party decorations and food from a previous event still adorned a section of the bar, standing in sharp contrast to the atmosphere of controlled panic that now gripped the detectives as they watched the chilling replay. The video captured not just the act, but the perpetrator's deliberate, calculating demeanor. Detective Miller immediately paused the footage, zooming in on the woman's face. "Do you recognize her, Frank?" Harding asked, his voice low. Frank squinted at the screen, a look of dawning horror spreading across his face. "And yes, I've seen her before. She's been in a few times, usually around the same time as the judge. Never ordered anything, just sat and observed." This observation solidified the premeditation. The video footage became the linchpin of their investigation, transforming a perplexing medical mystery into a clear-cut case of attempted murder. The question was no longer what had happened to Judge Finch, but who was this woman, and what was her motive? The methodical enumeration of evidence had begun, and the first and most crucial lever, the video recording, had been pulled, exposing a meticulously planned act of violence. The investigation shifted from a broad inquiry to a targeted pursuit, with the digital eyes of a bar's security system providing the silent, irrefutable truth. With the damning security footage in hand, the investigation escalated rapidly. Detective Harding and Miller immediately circulated stills of the suspect's face to various law enforcement databases and local informants. The clarity of the video, a fortunate byproduct of the bar's recent upgrade, ensured a swift identification. Within hours, a name surfaced: Eleanor Vance. Her profile quickly revealed a critical connection. She was the aunt of Marcus Thorne, a young man Judge Finch had recently sentenced to a lengthy prison term for armed robbery. The motive was now chillingly clear: vengeance. Eleanor Vance was a woman with no prior criminal record, a seemingly quiet life, and a burning, unshakable belief that her nephew had been unjustly punished. The narrative of her life, once unremarkable, now took a dark turn, revealing a deep-seated grievance that had festered into a murderous intent. The next step was a tactical redeployment of police resources. A surveillance team was dispatched to Eleanor Vance's modest suburban home. The decision was made to approach with caution. While her immediate threat was contained, the possibility of other accomplices or hidden dangers could not be overlooked. The police, maintaining a discreet distance, observed her movements. She appeared to be going about her daily routine, watering plants, reading a book on her porch, a deceptive calm that masked the turmoil beneath. Inside the police station, a team of forensic experts had begun analyzing the trace evidence from the judge's drink. Although the toxicology report confirmed the presence of a potent, fast-acting neurotoxin, the immediate goal was to identify the specific compound and its source. This methodical analysis was crucial, not just for confirming the poisoning, but for potentially linking it directly to Eleanor. Open loops in the investigation were steadily being closed. The who was becoming clear, the why was evident, and the how was captured on video. The only remaining question was where Eleanor Vance had obtained such a lethal substance. This led the detectives down a rabbit hole of online forums, dark web marketplaces, and historical cases involving rare poisons. It was a painstaking process requiring specialized knowledge and an unwavering commitment to detail. Simultaneously, Judge Finch's condition remained critical but stable. Doctors fought tirelessly to counteract the effects of the poison. The revelation that he had been deliberately targeted sent shockwaves through the legal community, prompting heightened security measures for judicial officials across the city. The threat was no longer abstract. It was personal and real. The news of Eleanor Vance's involvement became public knowledge, albeit through carefully managed leaks to prevent her from fleeing. The thematic juxtaposition of her seemingly ordinary life against the extraordinary crime she had committed captivated the media. Headlines screamed about a vengeful aunt and a poison plot, painting a dramatic picture for the public. The repetition of key ideas, justice, vengeance, and the silent reach of surveillance permeated news cycles. Back at Eleanor's home, the surveillance team observed her receiving a package. It was a small, innocuous-looking box delivered by a regular postal service. This immediately piqued the detective's interest. Was it another component of her plot or an unrelated delivery? The ambiguity presented a challenge. They couldn't move in without cause, but they couldn't risk her destroying potential evidence. The internal debate was swift. Patience was paramount. The false narrative reveal, a common device in this genre, was now building. Eleanor's quiet demeanor, her apparent innocence, stood in stark contrast to the cold, calculated act caught on camera. The police were meticulously building a case that would systematically dismantle this facade. Detective Harding knew that the capture was only the beginning. The real challenge would be securing a conviction against a defendant who would undoubtedly portray herself as a victim of circumstances, a grieving relative pushed to the brink. The weight of the evidence, however, was undeniable. The silent witness of the security camera had sealed her fate long before she knew it. The stage was set for the dramatic apprehension, a culmination of diligent police work and the unblinking eye of technology. The urgency of the situation was palpable. Judge Finch's life still hung in the balance, and Eleanor Vance remained at large, a potential danger to herself or others if cornered. The investigation was now a race against time, with every minute bringing them closer to a resolution and to Eleanor's inevitable reckoning. The decision to apprehend Eleanor Vance was made late that evening after the forensic team provided a preliminary identification of the toxin. It was a synthetic derivative, complex and highly specific, leading them to suspect an online purchase from a specialized vendor. This information, combined with the earlier observed package delivery, provided the necessary probable cause. Detective Harding wanted to execute the arrest cleanly, without drama, but also with an overwhelming show of force to mitigate any unforeseen risks. The tactical redeployment was precise. Uniformed officers secured the perimeter of Eleanor's street, while a plainclothes team led by Harding and Miller approached her front door. The cool night air hung heavy with unspoken tension. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, adding a cinematic quality to the imminent confrontation. At precisely 10 p.m., Detective Harding knocked firmly on Eleanor Vance's door. There was a brief silence, then the sound of footsteps. The door opened a crack, revealing Eleanor's face, etched with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Her eyes, still sharp, betrayed no immediate surprise. "Eleanor Vance?" Harding's voice was calm, authoritative. "We have a warrant for your arrest." Before she could react, the door was gently but firmly pushed open, and the plainclothes officers moved in with swift, professional efficiency. Eleanor offered no resistance. Her face remained composed, almost serene, as if she had been expecting this moment. She was informed of her rights, and then, without a word, she was led out to a waiting, unmarked police vehicle. As she was escorted away, a brief, almost imperceptible glance flickered across her face, a fleeting moment of defiance mixed with resignation. The methodical enumeration of evidence continued back at the station during her interrogation. Eleanor initially maintained her innocence, offering vague denials and feigning ignorance about Judge Finch's condition. Her demeanor was cold, almost detached. The false narrative reveal began with Detective Harding playing the security footage from The Gavel and Grog. The moment Eleanor saw herself on the screen, her hand furtively dropping the vial into the judge's drink, her composure visibly fractured. The mask of innocence slipped, replaced by a flicker of raw emotion, a mix of shock, anger, and perhaps a touch of despair. The thematic juxtaposition was stark. Her calm, almost robotic responses contrasted sharply with the irrefutable visual evidence of her calculated act. The video was a silent, unblinking accuser, stripping away all pretense. The repetition of key ideas, particularly the phrase, "everything was recorded," began to chip away at her defenses. Detective Miller then presented the toxicology report detailing the specific neurotoxin found in Judge Finch's system. He then laid out printouts of her online purchase history, revealing the acquisition of the exact same compound from an obscure chemical supply website. The innocuous-looking box observed earlier by the surveillance team was then connected to a recent delivery from that very vendor. The open loops were all closing one by one. Trapped by the overwhelming evidence, Eleanor finally broke. The confession, when it came, was a torrent of pent-up rage and sorrow. She spoke of her nephew Marcus with a fierce protectiveness, believing him to be a victim of a biased legal system and a cold, unfeeling judge. She described her meticulous planning, her weeks of observation, her singular focus on revenge. Her voice, once calm, now trembled with a mixture of bitterness and a strange, almost serene acceptance of her fate. The dramatic reveal of the confession was not a shout, but a chilling whisper, confirming every detail the police had painstakingly uncovered. She admitted to obtaining the poison, to practicing the discreet delivery, and to waiting for the perfect opportunity. Her justification was simple. Judge Finch deserved to suffer for what he had done to her family. The emotional tone in the interrogation room shifted from tense questioning to a heavy, somber understanding of a tragedy fueled by misguided love and deep-seated grievance. The gravity of her actions weighed heavily in the silence that followed her confession. The investigators, though hardened by years of similar cases, could not deny the profound human tragedy unfolding before them. Eleanor Vance, once a seemingly harmless woman, had transformed herself into a calculating perpetrator, driven by a distorted sense of justice, utterly oblivious to the silent digital eyes that had watched her every move. Her journey from grieving aunt to attempted murderer was now fully laid bare, captured not just on security footage, but in her own chilling words. And the methodical storytelling had reached its dramatic climax, leaving no doubt about her guilt, but profound questions about the nature of justice and vengeance. The aftermath of Eleanor Vance's confession plunged the legal and medical communities into a whirlwind of activity. Judge Finch, clinging to life, became the focal point of an intensive medical effort. The specific neurotoxin identified, coupled with Eleanor's confession regarding its source, allowed doctors to tailor a more effective treatment protocol. His recovery would be long and arduous, a testament to both modern medicine and the resilience of the human spirit. The emotional tone surrounding the case remained grave and urgent, highlighting the fragility of life and the severe consequences of misplaced vengeance. Eleanor Vance was formally charged with attempted murder and other related offenses. Her arraignment was a somber affair, attended by a throng of reporters and curious onlookers. She pleaded not guilty, a predictable move despite her earlier confession. Her legal team immediately began to construct a defense, focusing on temporary insanity due to extreme emotional distress, attempting to portray her as a tragic figure, a grieving aunt pushed to the brink. This was a classic example of the false narrative reveal, attempting to paint a picture that contradicted the cold, calculated act caught on camera and confirmed by her own words. The prosecution, led by a formidable district attorney, meticulously built their case. The security footage from The Gavel and Grog was the star witness, played repeatedly for grand jury members and later for the public. Its clarity and directness were irrefutable. The toxicology reports, Eleanor's online purchase history, and her detailed confession all contributed to an overwhelming body of evidence. The common devices of methodical enumeration and open loops were constantly employed by the prosecution, laying out each piece of evidence in a clear, compelling narrative. Lever 1, the video. Lever 2, the poison. Lever 3, the confession. each element built upon the last, tightening the net around Eleanor Vance. The language style used in court documents and public statements was professional and weighty, emphasizing terms like premeditated, malice aforethought, and calculated intent, underscoring the severity of her actions. The impact of the case extended beyond the courtroom. It spurred a renewed debate on judicial security and the psychological toll of legal decisions on individuals and their families. The story served as a stark reminder that justice, while often abstract, could evoke profoundly personal and dangerous responses. The point of view shifted from the omniscient narrator of the investigation to the direct, authoritative voice of the legal system outlining charges, evidence, and legal procedures. The trial itself was a high-stakes drama. Eleanor's defense painted a picture of a distraught woman consumed by love for her nephew, acting irrationally. Her lawyers argued that her actions, while extreme, were born of desperation, not malice. They attempted to humanize her, to elicit sympathy from the jury. However, the prosecution systematically dismantled this defense, emphasizing the premeditation, the careful planning, and the cold execution of the crime. The thematic juxtaposition of her desperate pleas against the undeniable evidence of her calculated actions was a powerful tool for the prosecution. The repetition of key ideas, particularly the phrase, "everything was recorded," echoed through the courtroom, a constant reminder of the digital witness. During her testimony, Eleanor remained composed, almost stoic. She spoke of Marcus Thorne's alleged innocence, her voice filled with a quiet conviction that was both unsettling and compelling. She depicted herself not as a villain, but as a protector, a woman who had taken matters into her own hands because she felt the system had failed her. This was the final, desperate attempt at a false narrative, trying to reframe her actions in a sympathetic light. However, under cross-examination, the meticulously gathered evidence, particularly the video footage, proved insurmountable. Her calm facade cracked again, revealing the underlying anger and resentment that had fueled her actions. The verdict came swiftly, guilty on all counts. Eleanor Vance was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, a consequence that brought a grim closure to the saga. As she was led away, her face betrayed a flicker of something new, not defiance, but a profound, almost weary understanding of the irreversible path she had chosen. The story of Eleanor Vance, the vengeful aunt, became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of how deeply personal grievances can twist individuals and lead them down destructive paths, ultimately failing to grasp the ubiquitous gaze of modern surveillance that records every calculated step, every furtive action, exposing the truth no matter how meticulously hidden. The finality of the gavel's sound served as a powerful, dramatic end to a tale of misguided love, chilling vengeance, and the unblinking eye of a hidden camera. The long shadow of Eleanor Vance's actions stretched far beyond the courtroom, influencing not only the individuals involved, but also the broader legal and security landscapes. Judge Finch's recovery, though slow and painful, was ultimately successful. He returned to the bench, albeit with a heightened sense of vulnerability and a renewed commitment to justice. His experience became a rallying cry for stronger protection for judicial officers, leading to significant increases in security budgets and a re-evaluation of personal safety protocols across the legal system. The emotional tone within the judiciary shifted, becoming more urgent and serious regarding personal security, recognizing that their decisions, however impartial, could incite extreme reactions. For Marcus Thorne, Eleanor's nephew, the revelation of his aunt's desperate act was a complex blow. While he maintained his innocence regarding the armed robbery, his aunt's crime inadvertently drew more scrutiny to his own case, making any future appeals an uphill battle. The thematic juxtaposition of his initial conviction with his aunt's subsequent crime created a narrative where the lines between perpetrator and victim became even more blurred in the public eye. Even though the two cases were distinct, the narrative structure now entered a phase of reflection, examining the ripples created by a single desperate act. Eleanor Vance, now incarcerated, began a new solitary chapter of her life. Her initial defiance eventually gave way to a quiet, somber resignation. In prison, she rarely spoke of her crime, but the memory of her nephew's perceived injustice remained a guiding force in her thoughts. Her story became a cautionary tale within correctional facilities, a stark illustration of how unchecked grievance can lead to catastrophic choices. The psychological profile that emerged from her case, a woman of deep loyalty and conviction, transformed by a sense of powerlessness, became became a subject of study for criminologists, attempting to understand the rare confluence of factors that could drive an ordinary individual to such an extraordinary crime. The repetition of key ideas, particularly the concept of justice served, albeit in different contexts for Eleanor and Judge Finch, permeated the public discourse. The incident also sparked a wider conversation about the role of surveillance in society. The Gavel and Grog, the unassuming bar that had inadvertently captured the entire event, became a local landmark, its security system lauded as a silent hero. The use of high-definition surveillance footage as irrefutable evidence in court cases saw a significant uptick, underscoring the omnipresence of digital eyes in modern life. The open loops of the investigation, how she acquired the poison, how she planned it, were all definitively closed, leaving no room for doubt about her guilt or the methods used to uncover it. This solidified the public's trust in advanced forensic and surveillance techniques. The audience addressing style, which initially drew viewers in with "pay attention to the young woman," now reflected on the broader implications, speaking to we as a society trying to understand and prevent such acts. The incident also fueled the false narrative reveal on a societal level, challenging the simplistic notion that justice is always clear-cut or that perpetrators are easily identifiable. Eleanor Vance's ordinary appearance and lack of criminal history forced a reevaluation of preconceived notions about who commits serious crimes and why. Her case became a testament to the fact that even seemingly quiet individuals, when driven by powerful emotions and a distorted sense of right, can become capable of extreme acts. The methodical enumeration of consequences, judicial reform, heightened security, the ongoing pain of victims, the incarceration of the perpetrator painted a complete picture of the long-term impact. The story of Eleanor Vance serves as a complex tapestry woven with threads of personal tragedy, societal implications, and the ever-present unblinking gaze of technology. It underscores the weight of judicial decisions, the destructive power of vengeance, and the inescapable truth that in an increasingly surveilled world, every calculated move, every furtive act carries the potential to be permanently recorded, exposing the deepest, darkest secrets to the unforgiving light of public scrutiny. Her life, once ordinary, became an extraordinary and somber lesson, forever etched in the annals of true crime, a testament to the chilling power of a moment caught on camera and a stark reminder that even the most meticulously planned acts of retribution can unravel under the silent, vigilant watch of modern technology.